So I passed out the OPTIS navigation menu handout, and this is what external users will see. So we'll start with the welcome screen, which is basically anytime you're in OPTIS, if you are very deep in there, you hopefully can find your way back by just clicking the welcome screen, and it takes you back there. Pretty basic. And I touched already on the browse open notices, so we will post grant opportunities here, and you'll be able to go in. Eventually, this is a future process, you'll actually be able to go in here and begin an application process and say apply online, and then you'll be able to start filling out your application package right here. And the good thing about that is it would what you've applied for will still exist in the system, and then it will also show what was actually funded and how it ended up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be an amazing thing once it's done, so we can do away with a lot of manual forms. So right now it's just kind of a placeholder. One of the things with working with a software developer is it almost costs as much money to just disable something temporarily as it was to create it to begin with. So a lot of things we're just not using, but they're still there. And you just have to get used to that. The next thing is asset search. And Joni Bramlett will be here pretty soon, and we're going to go quite a bit into assets. But this is where you would go to search for your assets. You can find them by asset number, which is the OPTIS assigned asset number. So every asset that's in the system generates its a unique number for that asset. And like I said, we'll go over this more. And you can narrow your search by the type of asset and many other different ways. So I'll skip that a little bit, so we'll talk about it later. Then we have create documents. This is probably where you'll spend the most of your time. And tomorrow we'll go much more into detail on each of these, but it's creating periodic reports. And there's wizards that you go through, and you start by selecting your organization, and you just click through and begin creating your document. And then create reimbursement request, the same thing. The first thing on this happens to be choosing the biennium that your reimbursement request will be in. So, and again, this create documents will be there only if you are validated for e-response. And then we have my documents, which doesn't necessarily mean documents you've created or that really belong to you. It's just all the documents that you can access in the system. And when you click on my documents, there's two options under here, document search and email notices. I'll start with this one because we're not using it. This is a list of all opportunity notices sent to you by email. So this would be if you applied for a grant in the system and we reviewed it. I don't know if we still score them or do whatever business we have to do. And then we notify you from within the system, your application has been received and you may now view it or something like that. You would go here to check to see if you had a list of, if you had any emails from the system. So that's kind of, it's not disabled, but we're just not using it. And so then the other thing is document search. And like I said, this is where you'll spend a lot of time. By default, the search parameter is finding documents by person. And that's the person that's logged in. So I'm logged in as Charles D'Artagnan. So it's defaulting to find every document that I have had anything to do with, that I have created. It's not the best search feature, especially if you're new to production, because you haven't been in the system, you haven't created any documents in the system. You're probably, if you did a search on this, you wouldn't find anything. But that happens to be the default. And you see, you can also find other people in your agency by clicking on this find button, and then you could find anybody else. So if you wanted to search for documents for Isaac, you could do that. I'll just leave it at search by find by person for a minute. And so then you can also select document types. And these are the types of documents that you as external users can see in OPTIS. These are also listed in your user guide. The very first page of section 5, I believe, talks about the types of documents. A lot of them you really won't have much need to look at, the first 4 are all about the application. So since we're not using that feature yet, right now there's not much there to see. When we do activate that part of the system, though, there'll probably have to be another training about how do you apply and what all these words mean and everything. And then you could also search for your periodic reports, which is one you'll probably use quite a bit. Project headers. So that's the individual projects that are funded through your different grants. Each one has a project header and a project detail, so you could search for those. Reimbursement requests and sub-grant agreements. If you happen to know the document number, you could also put it in here. This has to be the OPTIS document number. We do use the grant agreement. The 5-digit grant agreement number is a valid number to use in OPTIS, and then there are also some other numbers that you'll see in a minute. I'll show you. The federal ALI catalog is something we use internally, but I don't think you'd ever really have much of a need to use that. It's just that the sort of the coding. Let's see if I can find it here. So each item, especially capital items, has a different ALI code, and we have to know this when we're setting up the projects. Probably not something you'll use a lot.
So would you use that internally more than we would use it externally?
When you get into your grant agreement, you'll see there's layers of your grant agreement in OPTIS, and you'll see the first page will just kind of have the basic information, and then you'll see project details. And if you drill down into that, you can see how your grant was funded and what ALI coding we're using. And it's,
I know now what you're talking about. I've seen those codes on those forms.
It's not something you would ever change, but it's something you might be interested in looking at, and it is there. Yes, Jenny?
They do also appear when you're creating your reimbursement request, when you're selecting which activity you want to be reimbursed for. But the text title is there too, so you're not choosing entirely just by a code number.
Right. So, they have different ones for less than a 30-foot bus or bigger than a 30-foot bus and that type of thing, and you will see that, thank you, on the reimbursement request. So if you have a grant that funds several different types of vehicles, then you would need to know which one you're seeking reimbursement for instance. You can also search for documents by a date range. So you could say you want to see all periodic reports, between 2 dates, and search for it. This is such old data, I'm not going to attempt to put in dates here because I probably end up with nothing in the search, but if you know that, you could do that. The document status is a wee bit confusing. Currently active is a draft document that needs attention by whoever this person is, by Charles. So it's the currently active means the document isn't complete yet, and Charles has been working on it. Complete means just that the document is finished, all steps are complete, so you could search for those types of documents. In progress, and this is kind of the confusing one, it means that if the document's not complete, certain steps are still waiting to be done, but not necessarily by Charles. So if Charles created, say, a quarterly report, forwarded it on to the supervisor, it would show, and then did a search in progress, that document would show up because it's not complete. He did have something to do with it at one time or another, but it's waiting for someone else to do the step. The reason I say all that is because it's very, very confusing, and I would just suggest you always check all, because none of you have so many documents that you would need to filter it by document status. There's better ways to filter it, just by the type of the document or something. But it's very easy to forget, since the default is currently active, to put all this stuff in here and then just hit search and wonder, I don't see the documents I'm looking for. And that's because it's only looking for currently active documents for you. So I've asked that all be made the default, and that's again something I put on the log. It just seems like it would be more user-friendly and easier when you're first learning the system. But if whenever you're doing a search, if you don't see what you're expecting to see, double check that, and this is the way to go, because then you just get everything. Okay, so find by person, I said, isn't the best way to search. These are the other search options. Document title. That's good if you happen to know what someone named the document. And it could be something that somebody just keyed in and they used the word, say, vehicle or something. I'm not even sure if this will come up with any. After all that, it didn't find anything. Let's see. Well, anyway, if you happen to know, let's see, maybe reimbursement request. So anyway, this is proof positive that it's not a very good search feature. Find by organization, hierarchy, or organization are good ones to use. The only difference between the two is that if you choose find by organization, it will ask you to choose your organization, and it could be a sub-agency. And you will get documents just for that sub-agency. If you use find by organization hierarchy, it will find documents for all the agencies in your hierarchy. So a lot of it depends on if you even have sub-agencies or which one of these you want to use. So if I say find by organization, it defaults to Three Musketeers. I think that's the only one that Charles has association with. And so then now it's going to look for all whatever I choose for the Three Musketeers. So let's say we choose all sub-grant agreements for the Three Musketeers. You notice how things change depending on what you select. So I selected sub-grant agreements, and this new field showed up, which is the 4 types of grant agreements that we have in the system. So if you wanted to narrow it down to, oh, I just want to see my formula, state formula agreements, you could do that. And again, you could do document number, the ALI catalog date range, and we'll leave it on all, and then say search. And since this is just a fictitious provider in the system, there aren't a lot of documents because I had to go in and create all these. But you would get a list, and it may be more than 1 page. And you can then click in the sub-grant agreement and see it. And while I'm here, I might as well just explain what this is. So this is the OPTIS page or the OPTIS screen of kind of like the top page of your sub-grant agreement in the system. So it has what type of agreement it is and who it's written to. So it's Three Musketeers Operations Grant. It has all the recipient information. So OPTIS just pulls this from your provider details. It shows the central file number, so that's your grant number. It has your provider number, which we don't use and you probably won't either. It has the effective date and the execution date of the agreement, and you see how they're not the same. The grant agreement was written, and I think the wording is like effective on July 1st or when executed or something like that. And so this agreement wasn't executed until the 9th, and so that's the official start date of the agreement. And then it expires June of 2011. And then it has OPTIS information. Normally this would have your grant program manager here. So if this was an operations grant, it might have Sharon Pierenboom's information here. And then it has how much is funded in the grant, if there are any payments pending, payments approved, and what the balance is on the grant. So then this is what I was talking about before. This is the details of what's been funded on the subgrant. And you can click in here, anywhere in there, and this is the project header. And it just has more detail about this grant agreement, that the total project cost is $10,000, your local match is this much, the total grant is this much. And then you can click anywhere on here and it'll take you to the same place and go into more detail on this agreement. Hi, Joan. Hi. And so there's more details here, and here we have the ALI coding. And I believe you can even click in here, and it will show you how we funded it. This shows how, and this probably doesn't mean a lot to you, but we funded it out of OR 1835. It shows your match ratio. So we've just burrowed down into this grant agreement. And to get back out, you can just close all these. It's best to use the close or back or forward buttons that are within OPTIS, not the X up here, but use this one here. At least I've been told, so I'm not sure why. So I'm just going to close all of these until we get back, oops, I went too far, to the subgrant agreement. Okay, so there's the header, the details, and the front page of the agreement. Then you can look at attachments. There aren't any attached here, but if there were, that's where you find them. You can look at view data, and you can. These are really helpful. You can see how it's funded, and it's just a brief snapshot of how this agreement is funded. You can see the payment history, and this you have to scroll over. So how much was funded, how much has been requested. Actually, that requested is not payments, that's when you applied, you requested for that amount. Match, payment, and balance. So no payments have been made on this, so it's not real helpful, but that's where you would see that. Available balance is still the amount that was funded. I'm going to talk about this overview a little bit later. And the last thing I wanted to show you here before we move on to assets is if you click on View PDF, and it sometimes takes a while to load, or it doesn't load at all. You see your actual grant agreement. So this is what we print out and mail to you. And it's got every page. Just like what you should have in your file back at your office. It has a blank signature page because this is the one that we printed and sent to you. You know this agreement has been executed because we saw that on the front page where it said the execution date. And there's your Exhibit A. What's that?
The most important page hasn't been completed.
That's true.
The statement of work. If you don't read anything else, read
that. So when you go in and log into your actual agency, read your statement of work. Joni will be contacting you and testing you on it. One more thing I wanted to talk about was the CFDA number. Sometimes we get calls, people wanting to know what that is, and it's on the very last page, right here, this federal catalog number. I don't know what CFDA stands for.
It's the federal catalog number for the domestic assistance. It means which program funded it, which section of law is funding that project.
Right. Okay.
And in this case, it was 5311 or the rural program.
Okay. The last thing I'll show you before we move to something else is a new feature we have. And so I didn't put this in the binder yet because it's pretty new, so you can put that in your binder. We now are scanning and attaching executed signature page back into OPTIS. So you can actually see that, and I'll show you. And just to show you that, for some reason I couldn't log in as an external user to show you, but you open any grant agreement. This happens to be a Sunset Empire one. You'll access it slightly differently, but there's attachments. And I think Arla does this.
Mm-hmm.
She scans the signature page back to the executed grant agreement. Yay. And you can actually see it in full living color, so that's helpful.
And I've noticed when I open documents in OPTIS, if I click on the PDF document, sometimes it doesn't open, but if I click on the save button, it will open it better for me.
Okay, so this is PDF and this is save.
And if you click on that, you can open it or save it, so it works better for me.
And it does depend just on how you're logged in or whatever. So that's a good feature that's nice to have. And like I said, follow the section that I passed out to find it. I had to show you logged in as an internal user. So since Joni's here, and I think that's what's on our agenda, we will make a transition to assets. Okay, so back to assets. When we first started using OPTIS internally, we spent several weeks loading lots and lots of asset information into the system. And Joni had kept amazing, just the detail was amazing on their spreadsheets of every bus, every vehicle, everything. And it was meticulous. We then took that, and rather than having somebody like Jenny's been doing now, enter assets, asset by asset by asset, we did a upload or a data dump. into the system to get all those assets in there. And there were a few glitches, but for the most part, it worked out pretty well. So, and then from that point on, we methodically added assets as they were purchased into the system. So as far as I know, every asset, PTD funded asset, is now in OPTIS vehicles only. Not,
I was going to say,
yeah,
I don't
not
think others.
equipment and facilities. So the vehicles, and that was the biggest chunk of them. And I don't know, maybe one of you could speak to where we are with those other pieces, the vehicles or.
It's pretty much on hold because of workload, isn't it?
I think so.
Okay.
We did a few other assets, but we have not had the time to put into it, so
Okay.
unfortunately. But
Down the road, we'll get there.
yes, we will.
Yeah. So what this training will describe is how you can view what we have recorded for you in OPTIS. We've decided to not allow you, for lack of a better word, to enter your own assets. And you should be thankful because it's very, very time consuming. There's a lot of detail. And we decided that we would like things to look standardized, yes. And so many of the fields are just fields where you can just type anything in. Having just one or two people doing it at our agency seems to be a better way to manage that rather than having each of you enter them yourself. But down the road, we are going to have the ability for you to enter your non-PTD funded assets into the system. So if you wanted to manage your entire fleet in OPTIS, you could. And that's something a lot of people have requested and is on a work order, I believe. So hopefully that will be happening soon.
Can I
Yes.
just interject that if you push the button to add assets, OPTIS will allow you to do it, but then I will find it and call you and go, I'm deleting that.
Okay, so that's another one of those situations where it costs more to have the software developer, take that feature out temporarily and then put it back in than it would to just try to train you guys not to use the add asset button. So thank you, Jenny. So after today or this training, if you find any errors, because you know your assets better than we do, please contact Jenny. Sometimes it's helpful to send like even your spreadsheet where you manage it and highlight it and say this one and this one aren't matching with what's in OPTIS or whatever, and just work with her. She's extremely busy. I'm transitioning out of training and doing some other things, and all my duties got given to other people, and a whole bunch of them went on to her, and there wasn't anybody to give all of her duties to. So be patient. She's extremely fast and extremely easy to work with, but she is also very, very busy. But I've heard it said that if you want something done, you ask somebody that's busy.
And if you need something really changed quickly on an asset, just call me up or email me, because I will do things in there too.
Yeah.
And I have full authority to go into the asset register and change, like if we have the wrong number of seats or we put in a typo with the VIN number or something. We want to get those corrected. So, if because you're working with Jenny on payments and she's really bogged down, just have me do it for you, because she needs some help.
Because we certainly don't want it to hold up a payment, and sometimes it does because your report needs to be in and complete before you can request reimbursement in OPTIS. And sometimes it's an asset issue that's holding you up on getting your report completed. And so that can, have this snowball effect. So we will work with you for sure.
Yeah, so definitely do let us know if that's the case, because we do prioritize and sort that all the time.
Right.
And if it's stopping you from reimbursement, we'll move it up in the workload.
Yep, definitely.